The yard sale that's happening at your funeral.
Yep.
What's the item that's going to go for the most amount of money, do you think? And what's the one that's going to be left there at the end? Even after all the discountings happen, no one's going to take that thing.
Maybe the first thing to go would be a big box of Tupperware.
Yeah.
Only for practicality.
Yeah. Can't say no to practicality.
Yeah. And I don't know about the last thing. It might break my heart to have to think about that.
Yeah.
I might be too sad.
Maybe the painting, Anne.
Yes.
Maybe the painting.
No.
Surely not. Welcome to The Final Encore, a show where we explore the life and legacy of some of Australia's most interesting characters as they step into our funeral parlour to reflect on their life by planning for their death. I'm your host, Sam McConkey, and with me in studio today is Anne Wood. Anne is an award-winning actress who's been a fixture of the Australian and international stage for decades, performing in everything from Mamma Mia to Cats and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. We'll get into all of this and more as we explore how 30 years in front of thousands of people comes together for a final farewell. Anne, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
Now, the point is, as you know, to plan your funeral. Before we get there, though, I want to start by talking about death more generally. It's a loaded topic for a lot of people. You're far more pragmatic about it. How would you describe your own attitude towards death?
I guess I am pretty pragmatic. My feeling is I feel like it's even silly for me to say I believe in reincarnation because to me there's no believing about it. It just is. So to me every life is a journey, an opportunity to grow and evolve as people, deepen in our understanding of ourselves and why we're here. And then we peel off and we come back again for another go.
I think when we were speaking last, you almost described it as like, I'm trying to remember your words here, but like death is the respite from one life to the next, or the release or something to that effect, where you go from one life, have a rest, come back and do the next one.
Yes, I kind of feel like this is the hard yards.
Yeah.
Being here on this crazy planet is the tough bit.
What's the dream next life?
My dream next life would be that I would be born into a group of people who have the same understanding that I do so that I can start where I left off.
Let's start talking about your funeral generally. Before we get into specifics, what does a good funeral look like to you?
I've been to some funerals and I've actually sung at some funerals. I think a good funeral is something where anybody who wants to speak can speak, that we get a really good sense of all the angles of the person because different people are expressing from their relationship with that person.
Yeah.
And I guess celebration.
Yeah. I think one of the nice things about funerals, certainly the ones that I've been to, is you typically have a relationship with somebody that's confined to an area of your life or a hobby that you shared or a workplace that you shared. Unless you're close family, you often don't have the full picture of that person's life. Funerals is kind of the unique moment in time where like all of those pieces of the jigsaw puzzle come together and you're like, oh man, I never knew Johnny was in a band that toured in the 80s. And I can't believe Margaret was a go-go dancer in Egypt in the 60s. It's sort of that one place where all those jigsaw puzzle pieces come together.
I've definitely had that with relatives where I've been to a relative's funeral and stood there and thought,
Auntie Margaret, how about that?
I did not know anything about this person and I was related to them.
Okay, let's talk specifics then. The first question is venue, Anne. What are we broadly thinking?
Oh, golly.
Outdoors, pub, musical theatre stage. What's the vibe?
Definitely not a musical theatre stage and not the pub either. Maybe outside would probably
Any
suit
particular
me.
spot?
Somewhere in the bush. I'm more a bush person than the ocean person. So I'd probably go somewhere where there was lots of native scrub. And warm.
And warm scrub.
I really hope that when I do go that it's sort of spring or summer or early autumn because
God forbid you're having a funeral in the scrub in July. And
I can't stand the idea of being cold. So,
right, we're in the scrub. Next decision is music, Anne. What's the soundtrack to your farewell?
I've spent a lot. Of course, I work with music, and I've spent a lot of time with music, and I think I have a very strong understanding of the power of music and how music can not only change your mood,
Yeah.
it can instantly reconnect you with something that happened years and years and years ago. Like if I hear Ballroom Blitz by The Sweet, I'm instantly back in the caravan at the back of my parents' house trying to do my biology questions and dreaming about the boy next door. I'm there in a trice. So I think that it's very it's so evocative that I feel like music can mess with the way people are feeling. And I think if you are at a funeral and you hear music that makes you feel even more emotional than you already are, it can be quite invasive. It can be almost manipulative. So in many ways, I'd love to have no music for that reason, so that it didn't kind of interfere with people's process.
So the emotion was less manufactured and more from a place of authenticity.
Yeah,
Has it happened to you at a funeral before where you felt there's emotion here but it just doesn't feel authentic?
I've been to funerals where I didn't know the person. I've sung at funerals where I didn't know the person, and I've felt like blubbing my eyes out because of the choice of music and also because of the feeling of grief that comes off people. You can feel the energy coming off people as you're singing. So, so I do kind of feel like I wouldn't choose anything, but I'm also aware that can be uncomfortable for people sometimes if there's just silence or space. So I think I'd probably choose something really simple, and if I was to have any music, just to make people feel a bit more comfortable, some simple piano music or something that my sister might have composed.
Is there a dress code at the funeral, Anne?
No. Wear what you like.
Wear what you like to the outback.
I'm not there, so I don't care.
What's on the menu, Anne?
I'm gluten-free and dairy-free. And so I feel that I would like to impose that on all the guests, that they have to be gluten-free and dairy-free as well. But as I often say, there's never been a better time in history to be gluten-free and dairy-free. Totally. So actually it might be a good opportunity for people to find out that gluten-free isn't all cardboard.
So we've got a quiet funeral in the scrub with no dairy and no gluten. Are you worried about the attendance rate at this point, Anne?
Well, I won't be worried at the time, of course.
Of course.
I'll be
Yeah. We're talking off air about selling a funeral. So far we're struggling. Would you replace it with anything? Would you replace music with anything? Would you want to have theatre there, comedy there, anything like that?
I'd love to have an opportunity for anybody to speak. If it had the kind of vibe where even people who've never spoken in front of a group of people can feel comfortable to stand up and say a few words.
That's great.
I think that'd be really amazing.
In a minute, I'm going to ask you what you hope them to say about you. Before we do, though, I want to get to, we've got the music and food sorted. The next question I want to ask is about the shrine. At some point in the Australian Scrub, there'll be a shrine to Anne Wood.
Oh, you mean like the table where the guest book is?
Yeah,
or something?
where your life is represented through stuff and photos. What's the stuff? Are there mementos? Are mementos important to you? Would you want a memento of certain things from your life and career?
I don't really have any mementos from my career. When you work in theatre, all you ever really have at the end of a season is photos that you've taken and the program. That's all. And unless you've managed to snaffle the shoes that you loved that you wore in a particular scene, that might have happened.
Still got them?
Perhaps.
Nice. Confirm or deny.
But I feel like I don't really feel that they're representative of me. I don't think it's the sort of thing that I would want to have on display. It would feel weird to me. If you came to my house, you wouldn't see, I don't have posters on the wall or anything. It's you wouldn't know. But I do love mementos, and I love buying beautiful things for my home when I'm travelling with work. So I do have lots of things, lots of stuff. And I've just recently moved, and I've moved in. My sister and I bought a house together, and I do have a lot of stuff still in boxes because my sister says, that's not coming in. That's not coming inside. And I do realise she lives a more pared back
Understood.
aesthetic than I do. But I'm loving it. I'm embracing where she's at with it. And so I think maybe rather than just a shrine, I could have like a big trestle table with all my stuff on it. My sister could bring it all in the boxes and set it all out, and people could take something beautiful home with them. And everything that they didn't take, she could just put in the skip on the way home.
Take it, or would you have a little yard sale there, Anne, and send the donations somewhere?
Well, that's a good idea, but that'd be up to the people who were left. Who would think that was a nightmare. In fact, if I left those instructions, I wouldn't mind betting that she put everything in the skip before she got to the funeral.
Were there any items that when you moved in, she was just like, that's not even coming in a box. I just don't want that anywhere near me. It's not going to be in my house. That's a strong no.
Yes.
What is it?
I had a very big painting.
Okay.
I still have it because I'm not quite sure what to do with it. But I really loved it when I bought it, and I had it for quite a few years. And before we even moved in together, she would when she was around at my house, you'd look at it and say, you know that's not coming, don't you? You know that's not coming with us. How's that going to look in your bedroom, she'll say.
What's the picture of?
It's a landscape, and
It's fairly uncontroversial.
I really love it.
How can
She doesn't like it. Right. Doesn't like the colours.
Understood.
Too much red.
Doesn't like red. It's like a primary colour. It's an odd hill to die on.
Yeah, it turns out that I had a lot of red stuff.
Right.
So
the yard sale that's happening at your funeral.
Yep.
What's the item that's going to go for the most amount of money, do you think? And what's the one that's going to be left there at the end, even after all the discounting's happened? No one's going to take that thing.
Maybe the first thing to go would be a big box of Tupperware.
Yeah.
Only for practicality.
Yeah. Can't say no to practicality.
Yeah. And I don't know about the last thing. It might break my heart to have to think about that.
Yeah.
I might be too sad.
Maybe the painting, Anne.
Yes.
Maybe the painting.
No.
Surely not. I know that you're not big for mementos, but you played some incredibly iconic roles. Like you've sung in front of hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people. You must look back on that career and be proud of what you've done. I'm
really grateful for the experiences. And it's I don't feel like I'm done. I'm not done yet. I just every job just feels like a new adventure, I guess. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the experience that I feel now. I feel like when I go to an audition, if I'm in the zone, that I'm bringing all of that experience with me, that I'm bringing all those years of, and even if it might go pear-shaped, I still bring that into the room.
Has it gotten easier over the years?
It definitely has, yeah. In the beginning it was just a nightmare. But I'm very interested in mental well-being and thriving in the industry now. So I work a bit in that area as well, running workshops and talking to people and students who are about to graduate. The 21-year-old who's about to enter the musical theatre industry, what's the advice, Anne? Oh, get another job. Stop. I literally do say that because I think it's so important to have lots of balls in the air. And there are so many areas you can be working in within the performing arts, but also that's not the only thing we can do. We can do a million other things. So, and I think it's great to keep exploring those things so that our sense of ourselves and our sense of well-being isn't completely hinging on how that audition goes. Is there a dream role you haven't played yet but you'd like to play? There probably would be if I really thought about it, but I feel like I've played things that I might have loved to have played. Yeah, I've done it already, and I feel there's always some kind of gold in a role that I hadn't even heard of until I walked into the audition. So, yeah, it's everything is a surprise and brings something. Staying with the shrine, we've got the yard sale happening to the left. That's where the crowd is. That's where the crowd is there because there's no food and no music, so you might as well. Oh, no, there's plenty of food. Oh, there's plenty of food. There's plenty of dairy feed. We're all struggling here. The crowd's over here anyway. The memorial table's over here. What are the pictures that you want displayed, Anne, that reflect things that are important to you, the people that are important to you, the moments that are important to you? I think the pictures are really important. I remember going to a funeral of my next door neighbour a few years ago, and I didn't know any of her family. She was an elderly woman and I knew her. It was at a Greek Macedonian church. Her coffin was there, but there were no pictures and there was no mention of her either. It was all just like a set, I guess, service that is particular to that religion. And I spent the whole time looking around thinking, am I at the right place? I just wasn't sure. There was nothing personal. And if there had been a picture, then I could have gone, oh, yes, it's definitely her.
Yeah.
So I am in the right place. It was a strange feeling. But when I think about the pictures, you asked me about this, I think I would like a picture of me as a little child and maybe a picture as close to the end as you could get, kind of symbolic of the journey. So we all start out innocent babies, and then we all go on this wild adventure, and then we, at the end, we wear that adventure in our bodies and on our faces. And I think I'd like that. I mean, if somebody could be bothered, they could stick a few other photos in the timeline. But generally, I think, the beginning and the end.
When we were speaking a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned there was also a photo that was important to you where like you were just still and the world was passing you by, but you were just at peace. Why was that one important to you?
I think that's because there are so many photos of me mugging or on or just being raucous. And so to actually show that side of myself would be kind of cool, I think.
Did you find it hard to find calm as you were doing 8 shows a week around the country for so long?
I've always been the sort of person who errs on the side of drive, of being a bit
going
in a bit of a rush, I guess. Always in a bit of a rush, and always intent on where I was heading. And when I say that, I mean just physically. My physical movements throughout the day could be a bit. Was not someone who walked slowly anywhere. And I've kind of worked on that over the last few years, and just tried to just slow things down a bit and just feel the footpath under my feet and just notice the way I'm moving through the world.
Where do you go to find your calm and peace now? What does it look like if you're out there trying to be at peace, trying to be calm? What are you doing?
I think it's in here, always. So I can find it anywhere I am. I could be in the craziest situation ever. I could be sitting here, and I can access that part of me, I could be standing in the wings waiting to walk on, and in something that I've never done before, and it's opening night, for example, and I can access that part inside of me. So I don't need to find it somewhere else.
Is that part of your training as a performer, or is that something you've developed over time?
It's something that I've just developed in the last few years, I think, because I realised working on a show, performing 8 times a week, just that time from 7:30 until 10:30 when you're performing is such a ride. There's so many energies and so much going on with everyone, so much coming from the audience, that it's very easy to get caught up in this movement that is not necessarily. I'd get to the end of the show and I'd be ready for a party, or I wouldn't want to go home and go to bed. And I think I thought, this doesn't feel right. I need to be able to access everything I need on stage, and I don't want any of the mayhem to get in the way of my ability to access things or my thought processes. So I started working on just being really calm so that I was able to respond the best that I could.
Has it changed your life? Like I'll give anything for that skill, Anne. Has it changed the way you go about your day now?
It really has. It's meant that I can work more, actually. Because what I started doing was the thing that really was the catalyst for me was I was doing 8 shows a week. I was doing a tour, and I came back to Melbourne, and I went back to my teaching job during the day. So I was doing the show at night and it was only 3 days a week, so it wasn't full time, but the teaching. And it became really clear to me where I was just burning energy unnecessarily, like walking at 100 miles an hour from A to B within the place where I was working, where I was teaching. I thought, this is ridiculous, because I had to have enough energy to get to 10:30 that night. And it was fascinating. It was a really interesting experiment, I guess, that I conducted with myself.
Good on you. Let's move to the eulogy, Anne. What do you've got an open mic. Everyone's coming up. Maybe there's been a few folks feeling comfortable at this point. What do you hope they get up and say about you?
That's a really hard question.
That's why we ask it. It's hard-hitting questions on this podcast.
I hope that people say that I listened. Some people will be able to say that. Others maybe not so much.
Who's in which camp?
Possibly my daughter would say she never listened. But she's a teenager.
Your daughter's 16. Everyone at 16 feels that way.
So yes, listening, I guess, would be, and yes, she calmed down over the years.
You mentioned your daughter. What do you hope you've left her? And I know you've got many, many years to come, but what lessons do you hope you've left your daughter?
Gosh, that's another tough one. That's a big question, isn't it? Most of all, what I hope for her is that she deeply understands that she is just by being is more than enough. Is everything just by being. She doesn't have to do things to impress anybody. I think that would be, and also how good it is to make your bed every morning. Every morning.
My daughter's 4 and she's it's funny how I've got 2 kids. One's 6 who's very, very like unsure of himself, very, very active in searching for other people's like praise. And then I've got a 4-year-old daughter. They've been raised exactly the same, but my 4-year-old will just sing in the car every day, like, my name is Olivia, blah, blah, blah. I'm strong enough and loved enough by just being me, or something like this. And it's just like, it's amazing how kids completely raised the same can just come out of the womb with such different perspectives on their own self-esteem. And so
same parenting,
same exposure, same like circle of friends and family. One is like, I'm loved enough by just being me, and the other one is desperate for validation from anywhere that he can get it.
Wow.
Is that something you've struggled with over the time, particularly as someone in the public arena, this idea of you're enough by just being you?
I certainly don't feel like my job validates me. I don't feel that. I remember a friend of mine had directed a very high-profile production of an opera, which was very controversial, and there were some very damning reviews. And I remember her attitude, I was asking her about it, and she was like,
Interesting.
It didn't seem to touch her. And I've spoken to other actors about this. I thought that was a superpower when I saw her do that. I thought, because she's an extraordinary director, and that was like, well, I went for my vision and some people didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to, I think that if you rely on things like reviews after opening night to get you through the season, that can be very tricky as well. And I've spoken to other actors who all agree that they've often had the very best review they've ever had and the very worst review they've ever had for exactly the same performance. So it's kind of none of our business, all that stuff.
Do you read it? Do you read them?
I tend not to. I might have early on, and I might at the end of the season, but I wouldn't read it in the middle of the season, because even in a review, even if they've been complimentary, they might say something that makes you focus on a particular moment in the show in a certain way that you actually don't want to do that. You want to be on the journey.
It's quite a skill to be able to not read it, first of all, and then even if you do read it, separate it from your own sense of self-worth.
I often think about being a politician, that hardly the sentence is out of their mouth and people are commenting and everybody's got an opinion. And you'd have to be, it's a very different beast for them nowadays because of social media, I agree.
What about your legacy generally as it relates to the performing arts? Do you care? How do you hope you've impacted the performing arts scene in Australia?
I mean, a big part of me doesn't care. That's true. But I feel like probably the thing that's the most important to me is my conversations with people just about how to thrive in the industry. That's really more exciting to me than just about everything. I mean, I love the work, but I go home and clean my teeth and go to bed.
Last question before we move on from speeches, and it's a 2-parter. What's your relationship with regret generally, and is there any specific moments in life where you're like, I'd love to have a do-over of that moment?
I'm usually pretty good with regret because I think everything is a learning opportunity. So So to have regrets about things is to then deny what has come afterwards, the learning that you've had from that. But I was just thinking recently, I wish I had travelled more before this part of my life. I wish I'd, gotten out there a bit more. I mean, I lived in Germany for a year. I lived in the UK for 6 years and I toured there working. And I've lived in Singapore for a while.
Yeah, you've done a fair bit.
But I feel like I wish that I'd just been more places to visit.
Last question on the show, Anne, is epitaph. What's written on your epitaph?
You mean on a headstone?
Yeah, headstone or like metaphorical headstone. What's written on it?
Yeah, because I can't imagine a headstone because I don't want to be in the cold ground.
Of course, you'd be in the warm shrub.
Letting you know.
Yeah.
And yes, I'd rather be in the fiery furnace.
Yeah. Roger that.
Blasted out of some man's cannon. But if there was a plaque somewhere, because I don't want that whole urn on the mantelpiece thing.
Of course not.
None of that.
What would you want done with your ashes, actually, before you answer the epitaph question?
I don't really care. Yes, but don't keep them.
Maybe at the yard sale,
maybe
at the
in
funeral.
The bush.
Yes. Maybe that's an item.
Yes, maybe a little gift bag.
Bonbonnaires, if you will.
Yes, exactly.
Lemon tart and
sprinkled on the path.
A little salt and pepper shaker of Anne Wood. I like that. Sorry, interrupted. Back to the
plaque.
The plaque.
I think I'd have she's gone back to the stars. The biography's in the box under the bed.
It's a bloody long tombstone. I'm glad it's a metaphorical plaque.
Very small writing.
Is there going to be a biography? Is that a prelude to what's to come?
Well, I think there's a biography in everyone. In fact, I can see how it is everybody's responsibility in a way to write down what the hell happened while they were here and how they dealt with it. And then maybe, who knows, they might come across that book the next time they come back and they might trigger a memory.
Why do you think it's their people's responsibility out of interest?
So that we can learn from one another. So we can get a sense of the evolution of mankind and exactly what the flavour of what each year is, each lifetime is.
And this is going to be one hell of a unique funeral. I can honestly say we've never had anybody in the podcast before who's asked for a yard sale and a music-free funeral. I hope that it's many, 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 many years from now. But when it comes, it sounds like it's going to be quite the event. Thanks very much for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having me.